Hello again. The expression Islamophobia has, surprisingly, been around since the 1920s. It's only in the last 20 or 30 years, though, that it has become something which is generally discussed and worried about. It is often muddled up with racism, which is a pity because the two things are wholly distinct from each other. The reason that this has happened in Britain is, of course, because the great majority of Muslims in this country are of Pakistani, Bengali, or Sylheti origin. Because Islam has accordingly come to be associated, in Britain at least, with dark skinned people from the Indian subcontinent, it has seemed quite natural to lump it together with racism and assume that those who mistrust or dislike Islam must be motivated by religious hatred. This is, of course, quite absurd and typical of the dishonest tricks played by the race lobby in this country. I think that most people know very well that Muslims can be white Europeans, Albanians or Bulgarians, for instance, Arab, Indian, black or Chinese. Although it has its origins in the Arabian Peninsula, it's not an ethnically exclusive religion like Hinduism. My own feeling is that many people single out Islam for criticism in a way which they do not do for Christianity. Much of the Quran has been lifted wholesale from the Bible, and things such as the virgin birth of Jesus to be found in both books, as well as many other stories with which we are familiar, Noah's Ark, say. Of course, if you go through the Quran and the Hadith, you will be able to find bits which are weird and unacceptable, but that's true of most religions. I'm not altogether sure why people who are not Muslims would spend a lot of time studying the scriptures of this religion, rather than, say, reading the Talmud or Vedas, but doing so has inevitably led to their discovering things about it of which they disapprove. Of course, the Bible recommends amputation of the hand and stoning to death just as the Quran does, but few people seem to notice this. It might be because Islam has become such a prominent religion in Britain over the years that it has aroused hostility. Hinduism, of course, is the third largest religion in Britain, but you don't often hear people complaining about it as much as Islam, and nor do people other than Hindus spend all that much time combing the Hindu scriptures for things at which they can be offended. What is it then about Islam which makes many people uneasy and suspicious about the religion? Something which is mentioned from time to time are Sharia courts, and these are sometimes perceived to be a parallel legal system, one which acts alongside British law but is not under its control. This isn't really the case, but I can see why the idea would alarm people. Sharia councils can certainly adjudicate on matters relating to marriage and divorce. Again, it is curious that only Muslim councils of this kind seem to worry people. There are similar Jewish bodies, for example the London Bet Din, which deals with conversions and such like, but I have never heard anybody talking about the Bet Din in the same fearful or hostile tone that is used for Sharia councils. It is possible to take a civil dispute to a Sharia arbitration council, but this can only be done if both parties agree to it and then agree beforehand to be bound by the finding. This is all purely voluntary, and such councils cannot make any ruling which is contrary to British law. Other than that, halal slaughter is often cited as being more cruel than other methods of killing animals, but this isn't really true. Cutting an animal's throat so that the blood is immediately drained from the body is not an agreeable process, but it's no worse than what goes on in more traditional slaughterhouses. I've seen chickens having their throats cut and then being dropped before they're dead into boiling water. All killing of animals for food tends to be bloody and unpleasant. I don't believe that Islamophobia, which has been defined as the fear or prejudiced viewpoint towards Islam, Muslims and matters pertaining to them is at all the same as racial prejudice, but there is no doubt that just as some people have Jews on the brain, so too do others have Muslims on the brain and are as obsessed with the supposed shortcomings of the religion. I've never felt this personally, and generally find that the religious practices of Islam are close enough to my own to give me a lot of common ground with them. I suppose that Islamophobia is similar in one respect to anti-Semitism, in that I find both perplexing and cannot really get a handle on what it is that people find disagreeable in either case.